There's a reason why a lot of the celebrities that have been around Diddy for years are virtually silent right now. It's not because they are private people. It's not that they don't want to be tied up in the mess. And it's not even that they may be named in some of the documents. It's that a lot of these celebrities don't actually stand for anything. And the only thing that they usually stand for is protecting their money and their image. And we need to realize it. Let's talk about it.
Y'all already know what time it is. I got the black V-neck
on. What's going on, you all? Diddy has been arrested and he has been denied bond. The stories are all over right now. People are talking about it. A lot is going on, honestly. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to even talk about it today, but I said, let me go ahead because I felt a certain type of way. And there was a specific tweet that I saw from one of my mutuals that was talking about the silence of celebrities that got me to thinking that celebrities who have been around Diddy, who have taken pictures with him and been glad to be a part of him and uplifting him, doing all of the good times and things, you know, that he was doing, with also these things being done in quote unquote secrecy, but it being a long running secret in the industry that Diddy has been doing these things. Like, folks have made jokes about it several times, from Cat Williams to other folks. Like, they have made jokes and comments about Diddy and his parties. And it's honestly really like jarring to hear like a real professional like report from news anchors and like these folks talking about said freak offs and things. Like, Diddy has been indicted on racketeering and sex trafficking, and it's giving RICO charge, to be honest. It's giving that. And he's been arrested, and come to find out that he was supposed to be arrested the next day, but they felt a need to do it the day before. And some people are speculating that he might have, wanted to, quote unquote, end it all or whatever, or he was a quote unquote flight risk. Like, those are some of the rumors and things that you're hearing, but none of us know. So watching the conversation about it, the things that have been talked about in the 1,000 baby oil bottles and things, and people making jokes and memes and stuff, we're talking about real human beings and victims. And all I'm seeing right now is the sensationalism of the conversation about people being harmed. Like, apparently Diddy has been accused of hiring commercial workers, ex-workers, and hiring them to quote unquote seduce other folks, like seduce women, and was, apparently allegedly using drugs to make them do certain things, like having drugs available for them to participate in behavior that he has apparently been filming. And they said that these parties would last for days and all of that. Like, what consenting adults do in their time, whatever, doesn't bother me. Like, I've heard stories of folks like, people do what they want to do when it's consent involved. That's what matters. And people were saying, well, hey, if I have something like that in my house, like, the Fed's gonna knock my door down. Girl, nobody's thinking about you. Like, nobody is thinking about you. You don't have enough like power to be harming like these many people. When we're talking about folks who are being promised a career, that is something that Dunn talked about her experience being on Danny the Kane. Like, she said that she experienced abuse. And what happened? You had another artist from Bad Boy come out and say that she did not have that experience. And then come out, what is being reported is that Diddy made calls to her right before she released her statement. Like, apparently 100 or something calls were made. And that's another report that is being put out, is that maybe he was arrested the day before because he was making calls and stuff to victims, trying to get the stories and stuff straight. He had been living in a hotel for the last couple of weeks. He had been in New York. He knew it was coming. So Diddy has power. He has influence. And he has people that are going to want to protect themselves, and probably will do things to cover it up to keep the story from getting out. Dunn had every right to talk about it. And the response to her and her accusations and talking about her experience, it's not missed on me that the way people are responding to her story is different from other folks' story. Like, and I'm not gonna say it, like, y'all know why, but it's like nobody was taking Dunn's like story serious. You had Diddy's son come out and defend him, and then the next day your dad being arrested. Like, the only thoughts I have and the energy that I have is like for the victims, like the folks who are experiencing his harm now and had been experiencing his harm for years, and we're not believed. Like, we're not believed, and we're scared to talk about it. We saw Cassie, we saw the video of her waiting till this man is asleep to escape. Because at first Diddy said all these things were, slanderous and all that. Like, none of these things are true. These folks are kind of out to get money, da da da. And then we see the video. Like, they got you, Diddy. Like, Diddy love all of that. Like, I told you all that him doing this stuff on the bicycle and everything else was to get the PR machine moving, to see him as a family man, as a person who could not do these things. Like, he was out here trying to portray himself to be something instead of working and fixing the behavior. Like, that's what you need to do. The same thing I said when it came to them podcast bros. Like, you are more concerned about cleaning the image up versus like actually being a better person. And Diddy has not been committed to doing that at all. Like, you have not been interested in doing that in the 30 years that you have been doing these things. Like, you're a 50 something years old. I feel sorry for your children. Well, some of them. And honestly, I feel a little something, but it's just like, this their dad, but it's like the boys are, Justin is like jumping through hoops, like writing songs and lyrics and stuff. Like, girl, you're embarrassing yourself. Like, you're embarrassing yourself. Like, this whole situation is a mess, and seeing the jokes and things, people making jokes about the baby oil and all the other stuff. And it's like, people were harmed. I get that we want to quote unquote laugh at pain and stuff, but it only is okay when you're doing it with yourself. Like, I don't get that. Like we're talking about real victims. Like, you joking about Diddy is not doing any harm or whatever to him. You are participating in sensationalizing this moment and making it fodder and meme content when people are harmed. Like, what is going on? And y'all wonder why victims don't want to come tell their stories because of things like this. So you have that going on. And now you have celebrities not saying anything. Celebrities are virtually quiet. People who have no issue taking a picture with him, knowing that these accusations and stuff, like taking pictures with him, it's all good. And then these celebrities will try to pretend like, oh girl, like because the fans will speak for them, and say, well, they're private and whatever, da da da. Like, they don't need to speak on this. What I'm saying is, yeah, I don't expect them to speak on something like that. Like, I don't expect them to, but it's like, I don't expect them to because it will hurt their image. And they're not worried about anything other than their image. They don't want to be tied to that. So that's why I can't take y'all serious when y'all start talking about like things that matter about protecting blackness and all the other stuff. Because when it's about black excellence, hey, White House and all that, y'all don't have any issue doing that. But when it comes to protecting actual black people, y'all are nowhere to be found. Y'all are nowhere to be found. Nobody is saying anything. It takes nothing to say, hey, like, this is not right. But it will cause into conversation about where were you at while all this was happening too. So we had to think about that. Like, did you know about that? And they don't want to have to answer these questions, which tells me that y'all genuinely don't care at all. Like, y'all don't care. I can't take celebrities serious. Like, I can't take I can't take these celebrities serious. And that is one of the purposes of me doing this video, is that a reminder that celebrities only serve themselves. Like, they have to. Like, you see how easy it is to fall into something where you are aware that this person is doing harm. You don't want to say anything because you don't want to, mess up your chances. even when you are straight and you're doing well and you don't need this person anymore, you don't want that being associated with your image and all this. Like, it's always an excuse and it's always a selfish reason. And then y'all want victims to take on all of the heat to talk about what they have experienced when y'all are not willing to sacrifice anything. Like, y'all are not willing to sacrifice anything. And I'm not speaking, it's really just sad, to be honest. Like, that was one of the things that I thought about. It's just really just sad that the only folks who are speaking are the ones who making jokes. You got 50 Cent making jokes about things like he hasn't been in constant like drama and stuff with black women and harassing them and saying this. Cause like, girl, like, what is like, you're being funny about this? Like, you don't care. Like, you don't care. Like, you are acting as if you care about like this stuff when 50 Cent, like, I guarantee you there's probably like 3 or 4 people I can think of right now that you're around that have been accused of things too. Like, what is going on? Like, I'm just confused. So, you know, none of this stuff is like funny to me when we were talking about folks who experience stuff. Like, these folks' lives will be changed forever. Cassie, like, you know, her experiences with that, like, she deserves everything after dealing with that. Like, it's in the report in that he saw her after her while she was in college. Like, Diddy is 54 years old. 54 years old. Like, Cassie was how old? Like, when she met him, she was like, 18, 19. He was like probably 40 or something. Like, it's just, and being this big mogul and all of that, like, she never had a chance. She never had a chance. And when other folks have said these things, then it's like, oh, you know, y'all just out here for money. There is no accountability on the person actually doing the harm. Like, oh, y'all wanted this. Like, y'all wanted it. Like, yes, girl. Like, they don't know what they're getting into. The same way you sign up for predatory loans and stuff. Like, because the system allows it to happen. It allows us to prey on the weak and the vulnerable. That's what happens. That's why recruiters for the army and the military go into specific high schools with black teenagers, because they are vulnerable. Like, so when we're talking about like, how can someone like that consent in that? Like, how can a 19-year-old consent to a 40-year-old, like, promising these things? Like, have y'all not heard of stranger danger from your parents and all that, like, things that people will do or say to you as a child to get you to do things for them? It's like we have forgotten about that, and that stuff still goes on to this day. We still have people doing that, even in our clubs. Like, we have been taught that, hey, like, don't take a drink from somebody without seeing it being poured. Like, we know these things. So it's just like, there are people in this world who do things like that, and people feel even more empowered to do that when they have influence and money and all of that. And Diddy had all of that. And that's what the feds are saying, that he's been doing this for a while. There's a lot of information that's coming out that's misinformation. Folks were saying that, oh, they've been planning this for like the last 20 years. No, they have not been planning this. The feds have not been watching this for the last 20 years. They're looking at things that were reported and happened in 2009 and in the 90s, evidence that's coming out. I need for folks to actually like pay attention to the story instead of sensationalizing things and putting out misinformation, which doesn't help the victims. Because when we say stuff like that, we're hurting the victims. Like, we're hurting the victims. And we're not supporting them and coming out with this misinformation. Like, the story is the story. Diddy is being accused of these things. He's been indicted. Like, the jury has indicted him. They seen the stuff and like, girl, you know, this is what's going on. So like, I'm not going to get into all the specifics of the case because it's just it's a lot, like 14 pages of things. And I'm looking at some of it, and even looking at the Rhea Kalina, I think that's her name, who said, I acknowledge the recent lawsuit filed by Don Richard in which my name has been mentioned 33 times. While I fully respect Don's right to recount her experiences, I want to empathize that her account reflects her personal perspective and should not be interpreted as a universal truth applicable to everyone involved. It's important to understand that while I was present in some of these professional settings mentioned, many of the allegations and incidents described in this suit are not representative of my experiences, and some do not align with my own truth. Tony and I have always conducted ourselves with the highest level of professionalism and integrity. We were not involved in, nor were we aware of any behavior that could consider abusive or unlawful. Like, girl, she goes on and on, and this doesn't even make any sense. Like, what are you saying? Nobody is saying, hey, girl, that you, like, I'm not seeing any of that. So, and to find out that you may have received a call from Diddy, like, yeah, like going to Diddy having influence to call her and have her speaking, because like she doesn't have as much influence and power as a Diddy does. Like, it's a mess. One of the things that also jumped out to me is this conversation about billionaires, because I don't think, again, folks understand what a billionaire is. Like, we're seeing Diddy put his mama's house up. Like, he had to put his mama's house up, and the Fed said, girl, this still is not enough. Like, we don't want this. Like, he's had to spend a lot of money recently. He's had to spend a lot of money, but he hasn't spent a lot of money compared to an actual billionaire. And he's also not worth as much with all this stuff going on. So when y'all be talking about like billionaires, like 1 billionaire, 2 billionaire, 3 billionaires, like a lot of these folks are not billionaires. Like, the evaluations and stuff can be tweaked. It's kind of like who can say, I can say this is worth such and such. Like, these reports, like, we have to move out of that. I don't know why we're so fascinated. Like, oh, the idea of someone becoming a billionaire, a black billionaire, like we're going to be. Girl, you're more likely to be poor and be homeless than being a billionaire, point blank, and a period. Like, let that go. Diddy being a billionaire is not going to help you. And matter of fact, if we look closely, he's not a billionaire. I don't know a billionaire who has $1 billion liquid cash who has to put their mama house up. Like, that stuff does not happen like that. Like, a billionaire putting their mama house up doesn't make any sense, which means that he's not actually a billionaire. He can be a billionaire if things go right, but look where we are at now. Not getting to a billionaire. So I say that to show, like, with these folks having all of the things, they're still not at a billionaire status. So what does that say about us? This fascination that we have with being billionaires and being rich is just like, girl, it's not possible. Even for those who are closer to it than us, they still are not able to fully grasp it. Point blank, period. I don't really have anything else to say. Like, the indictment and the story speaks for itself. We've been saying that. We've been covering it. I'm just a little bit disgusted by the sensationalizing of this story, which is not good for the victims. And I just want us to offer more, like, care when we're talking about these things. It's not necessarily bad for us to talk about it, but we're creating memes and making funny pop culture moments about that. It's disgusting. And I'm one that loves to laugh at stuff, but it's like, I don't see any joy in talking about it. Like, I am glad to see Diddy experience something that he shouldn't have to, had he not been a bad, terrible person. Like, he was trying to cover it up for years. Like, he had been trying to make it seem as though he wasn't this person by changing his name and changing his, image. And it was just like, girl, what is going on? And I see that Carisha Young Miami is being mentioned in this a little bit. I saw her name being mentioned a little bit. And I think, had Young Miami been more forceful in her conversation about her not messing with that, like not agreeing, more intentional in calling that out, she wouldn't be mentioned as much. She still will, because she's a black woman, but it's like, girl, you're talking about some very serious things. You should have been very standfast and said, like, how you felt. Like, hey, girl, this is what it is. I do not mess with that. Da da da. Like, Young Miami, I have said this from the very beginning. You have lost so much in your association with Diddy. Diddy still has more than you currently right now. Still got a little bit more money than you, and you have exerted all of your whatever capital to make him seem like that he's younger than what he is and still hip. And girl, like, now you've been abandoned. Like, what did the girl say to Sugar Baby 101? Like, girl, make sure you get stuff in your own name so you won't be tied to him when that man falls off and finds somebody else. Like, girl, you supposed to be, you was the one rapping about it. Well, you wasn't writing about it, but it is what it is. Yeah, those are my thoughts, child. I'm not gonna ramble too long. Disgusting. The downfall of Diddy had been coming, and now she's here, and it's going to be interesting watching the next couple of months and seeing who is going to be mentioned, because that man That man who was speaking on that microphone said, girl, like he had a whole team that was doing these things. They were buying this stuff, they were supplying this and that. It's gonna be interesting to see over time, like who names will be mentioned, because if you think for a second that Diddy is not gonna squeal, he will be up there snitching. And he's gonna be up there snitching to some other folks, and they're gonna be making some names. So it's about to go down. Like there's already a CEO of somebody of 300 something entertainment that has already stepped down. Like it is going to be a drip drop mess for the next year. So Diddy, yeah, he has been denied bond, and he will be apparently sitting and waiting in jail into his trial. Yikes. That's all I got. Tell me y'all thoughts. Let me know in the comments. Until next time, talk y'all later. Bye.